Podcasters Roundtable, round 67, podcasting hacks. Us, we're a bunch of podcasting hacks. No, that's not it, because that would be, well, we probably could fill out an hour with a bunch of hot air, but we're going to actually tell you what our favorite hacks, those things we've done over the years during our podcast to help us produce a podcast, whether that's modifying a piece of gear or a special way to reach a new audience. Whatever it is, it's completely open to interpretation. We don't even know what a hack might mean to you, so that will be interesting in and of itself. In and of itself? You know what I'm saying. But happy St. Patty's Day. 2 D's, not T's. At least I know that much. I do have a Guinness glass. I don't have Guinness in it. You know, I only had so much time. Oh, look at that. Seth.
Cheers.
He has a Guinness. Very nice. Cheers. Virtual cheers. All right, so we're enjoying it. That sets our place in history. It's St. Patty's Day, March 17th, 2016. And we are going to do something today where we are going to bring in individuals. This would work better on Blab, admittedly, but we're going to bring in people one at a time. And if I quickly push you out of the room, don't be offended. I'm just going to try to do this like a radio call-in show where we try to get as many people in as possible to hear your hack. That also makes it imperative that the people in the chat who are watching live, hope there's somebody watching, is ready to go. So have your mic, have your camera. You could only do mic if you didn't have a camera. I will take audio only. We'll see your avatar. Most of you are listening to the audio only podcast version. I'm probably going to cut out all the painful parts of us getting in people to the chat. So, all right, here we go. And I will go ahead and just lead off, because in the spirit of spring training and baseball starting, go Giants, I'm ready to go. And that's because my favorite hack, or one of my favorite hacks, is something I'm using right now. So if you're watching the video, I'm showing you, because I'm holding it, as I do, the ATR 2100. And if you can see it on video, you are seeing an XLR cable come out of the bottom. You're also seeing, if I can get the lighting right, you're also seeing a USB cable coming out of the bottom at the same time. So you have this microphone. It could be an AT2005, what Dave Jackson's using right now. He is hand holding it, by the way. Glad to see he's made the jump, and in the roundtable style. And Daniel, you could just grab your mic. I mean, you just
I'll do that. I'll hold my high.
So, I think even Seth is coming through with the AT2005 today, I believe.
I am. Do I have to hold it? Is that
No, you don't have to hold it. In fact, we probably prefer
that
you
what
don't.
the cool kids do, though?
Yeah, it's only with training. But and Dave's a musician, so technically maybe he has training experience. Anyways, it does dual output. So what I do is I let this microphone go into USB on the computer. You're hearing this now on, so this is interesting because if you're watching live or you're watching via YouTube, you're watching the video archive at podcastersroundtable.com, you're hearing the results of the USB feed that I'm sending. So you get a nice high quality feed, very easy to put into your computer. However, if you're listening to the audio only version of this show, you're actually hearing the XLR direct to audio recorder version, right? So also very nice. So this thing can dual output. One day I just wondered, could this thing even do that? It does do it. It's allowed me to do some fun hacks, including using an audio recorder to record Skype. If it's just you and a Skype interviewee, which you could even set up with like a phone, a mobile device. So lots of fun hacks just with this microphone. We're a big fan of this microphone. It's really great, but it does this unique thing, and that has been one of my favorite hacks. But I didn't even introduce the roundtable. It's the normal guys, and I got Seth in here. But let's meet the roundtable. What are we, like 5 minutes in? Sorry, guys. I'm going on. See? Podcasting hack and a lot of hot air. Just up front. All right, Daniel J. Lewis, co-host Podcasters Roundtable. Welcome back.
Speaking of hot air, it's great to be back. I'm from theaudacitytopodcast.com.
I thought you didn't move to Phoenix.
No, I was referring to myself as hot air.
I was letting you off the hook.
Which I don't know if that's a compliment.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just trying to hook you up. But Dave Jackson, co-host Podcasters Roundtable. Welcome back, buddy.
Yeah, great to be here. Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting, broadcasting live from a Pittsburgh bathroom.
Hey, if you're listening to the audio-only version, and that should be enough to make you run for the screen and see what the heck is going on. Now, admittedly, his backdrop, it's not very interesting, but he's in a bathroom. A bit of a podcasting hack. Why did you choose the bathroom, Dave?
Best lighting in the hotel room.
Best lighting in the hotel. I shoot a lot of video, and oftentimes you do have to use what they might call practical lights that are already in the scene. They're already there. If you're outside, find a street lamp, right? It's better than shooting in the dark. Find what you have. So cool podcasting hack, and I don't know, maybe better acoustics as well.
And it's got a built-in seat, so
that
awesome.
does remind me of another hack that I actually enjoy doing, which is in a pinch. One of the best studios is right out in your driveway, in your car. Audio sounds fantastic. 2 of my biggest interviews I think I did in the car, 2 hours on compression, and that thing sounds great and people love it. And it was obviously it's not because of the sound, but people love the content on that one. But it was in the car. And it worked out really well. So I don't know if any of you guys have done that, but the way that the windshield being slanted helps, because you are in a glass box essentially, but you've got that slanted windshield. And you got a lot of padding, unless you're driving I don't know, some car that doesn't have much padding. What would that be? Some old car. I had a Jeep, even that had some padding in it, but it was actually had a lot of hard angles. NASCAR. If you're in a NASCAR, yeah, I think you're gonna have other problems with your audio if you're in NASCAR, but. That could be cool. Seth Resler, welcome. Is this your first roundtable?
This is my first roundtable.
Oh,
Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm sure I've tried before.
We have tried. It's just never worked out.
That's right.
All
right, well, share a hack then. You're here. Hack.
All right, so I'll start with one of my favorite hacks, actually. And this is one I shared in the Podcasters Google Plus group before. But I'm a radio guy. I come from radio, and when you're in radio, there's DJs will sit down with their program director, their boss, essentially, and play a tape of a recent show, and their boss will give them feedback. This is what you did well. This is what you didn't do well. And that's really important to the DJ process, particularly when you're, early or you're just starting out, or if you're somebody who's doing a morning show for the first time, stuff like that. This is how you get better, is that feedback. And when you're a podcaster, it's tough to get feedback, right? Because especially at the beginning, you sit there and you go to your family and you go to your friends, and they're nice to you. They aren't going to be critical. You're not going to get unbiased feedback, and they're not going to listen more than once or twice. After that, you've kind of run out of people that you can get feedback from. So this actually comes from a friend of mine, Dale Bertrand, who gave me this idea. But Amazon has this service that not that many people know about called Mechanical Turk, where you can essentially go and hire people to do small, repetitive tasks for a small amount of money. It's meant for let's say I had a list of restaurants and I wanted to look up the website for each one. I could go pay people 10 cents for each one they look up and upload a spreadsheet. They could do it. But Amazon's Mechanical Turk also works for getting people to listen to, say the first 10 minutes of your podcast and give you feedback on it. And, usually pay people $2 or $3, get 5 people to give me feedback. So the first 40 episodes of my podcast, I would run them through Mechanical Turk. I'd get 5 people on each one to give me feedback, 300 words. I'd ask them, what are 3 things you like about this podcast? What are 3 things that you would do to improve it? And some of the feedback is great and really useful and really insightful and detailed, and some of the feedback is, it's crap, but it doesn't matter because it's cheap. And what I look for is people who say the same thing over and over and over again. Because if I hear multiple people saying the same thing, it's something that I got to take care of. And my podcast changed dramatically in the first. I wish the first 50 episodes didn't exist, because the show got so much better, but it got better because of the mechanical feedback. The feedback I was getting through Mechanical Turk. I think that really made a huge difference in the show, and I learned a lot of things. I mean, it was how I learned I needed to put a roadmap at the top of each episode. It was how I learned that we had to get into the interview right away. It was like a lot of that stuff that I think those of us who have been podcasting for a while, I learned through this method. And sometimes you just have to hear other people say something before. You kind of know it in the back of your head, but it's not until somebody else says it that you go, oh, okay, yeah, I really got to do that. So that's my hack.
Awesome. What do you guys think of that? As Dave maybe had to actually use the bathroom, he just dropped off just like an ejection seat. Like this is a game show. The floor opened up and Dave fell through. Oh, here we go. So Daniel, you were probably listening closer than I was. Trying to get people in at the same time is tricky. But what do you think of that? Is it gray hat, or was it totally legit? Do you like it?
I like that. I'd never thought of that as, you're paying people not to download your episodes and bump up a number, but you're paying for feedback and not paying much. And I wonder,
like a focus group kind of, right?
Yeah, and I wonder how many of those people you paid to listen to your podcast end up subscribing because they enjoyed it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you the big thing I learned from doing the podcast at first. So I had this food and travel podcast, and the first time I did it, we interviewed a food blogger from Boston, and I had them review a restaurant. And essentially the feedback I got was, this would be great if I lived in Boston, but I don't, so who cares? And it's what ultimately made me change the whole, the concept of the podcast, because the concept of the podcast suddenly became, if you're going to travel to Boston, here's where you should go. And it became more about the neighborhoods and the foods and things like that. And so it changed the whole nature of the show and made it much more mass appeal. So I don't know that we got any listeners out of it per se, meaning directly from the people who were listening and giving feedback. But I think certainly it made me change the show in a way that made it accessible to more people.
Awesome. And Daniel, do you have a hack?
Yeah, one of my favorite hacks for podcasting, and this is recently, but I've had to stop using this hack. I live stream video with my podcast while I'm recording my podcast, and what I find is that using a webcam with my computer makes my computer rev up its CPU like any kind of live streaming does. And I'm using a MacBook Pro, which is close to the microphone, about 2.5 feet from the microphone. So when the CPU revs up, the fans get louder, that makes background noise. It's even going on right now while we're doing this Hangout. Well, the hack that I've found that's been my favorite is, when possible, to use my iPhone to do the live streaming. So for Blab, for example, instead of running Blab on my computer, I would run Blab on my iPhone and point the iPhone camera at me, or at my co-host too, if we're in the same studio. And then that way it's no CPU hog. My computer is not revving up. My computer is nice and silent, but we're still getting good enough video. And we would run the audio from the mixer into the iPhone. Now, the two reasons I can't do that anymore is, on Blab, you load it in a browser, you get the video and the chat room, except on Safari until recently. Blab now actually plays on Safari, but I was using Safari as a chat room only option for Blab since the video wouldn't display. So I would load the chat room in Safari on my Mac. The video wouldn't display, but the chat room would, so I wouldn't have my CPU being revved up by essentially watching video. That no longer works because Blab now sends video to Safari, so that's good news on their part. And the other thing that doesn't work is I have a black background now, and the iPhone apps that access the camera and don't give you exposure control will look horrible with a black background behind me. It makes me look jaundiced, it bleaches me out, so I can't really do that anymore with a black background. But it was cool while it lasted.
Awesome. Hey, Seth, did you mention your name of your podcast?
Oh, so the podcast there, the food and travel podcast, is Taste Trekkers.
Awesome. .com?
Yeah, tastetrekkers.com, TREKKERS.com.
Awesome. So as we get people, you definitely want to get your podcast in here. David has checked in. David, welcome to the Roundtable.
Thank you so much.
Sound great. What's your show, David?
The show is The Unwritable Rant at theunwritablerant.com.
Awesome. So what's your hack?
The hack is an interesting one and actually somewhat of an embarrassing one. I started out doing interviews, actually. The very first interview that we had was a real kind of a high-profile interview with A.E. Hotchner, who's an author and a friend of Hemingway the last 15 years of his life, which was a little daunting. And in getting that interview, I thought, okay, now how am I going to record it? Didn't know exactly how to use Skype or anything at that time, so I went old school analog. And matter of fact, I have it right here. This is a little Logitech device that's essentially you hook up via Bluetooth to your cell phone, and then used an H1 Zoom to record it for the whole interview. And I thought, this is going to be a nightmare, and it actually turned out a lot better than I anticipated. And I used it as a backup today.
Nice. I mean, oftentimes, we say, or I tell people, work down the sort of quality tree. Like, hey, do they have Skype, and can they plug Skype in, and do they have at least a headset or some type of microphone? And at some point, you get to like telephone, or maybe get to where you're at. I mean, the key is like sometimes you just get the interview, right? I mean, as long as it's not unlistenable, meaning I just can't hear what the interviewer is saying, then that's oftentimes the key thing, is to actually get that interview. Because I mean, listen to the person you got there, so you want to get that captured. So yeah, good job. Has anyone else used like a recording hack like that, or anything to record your show? To get stuck somewhere and have to change things up and be like, oh no, this is not working, so I got to go to plan B?
I've done the thing. Go ahead. Oh, you go ahead. No, go ahead. No, I did one where Skype just wasn't, or it wasn't Skype, but the whatever software I was using to record Skype was not going to behave, and so that's where I invented the one where you take the headphone out of your microphone into an RCA cable, right, with basically your headphone jack, and then however you get it, you need 1/4 inch on the other end to go into your portable recorder, or you can take a line out to line in. That'll work, and then you plug your headphones into the recorder. And the only trick to that is you have to hit record, otherwise you won't hear yourself. So that's kind of a hack on that. Daniel, what was yours?
When you're working with a portable recorder like a Roland, a Zoom, anything like that that has stereo microphones, if you're using that for your recording, there's a portable recorder sound that ends up being picked up from it because of the stereo, and I don't know exactly what's going on, but I know stereo is part of it because the recorder is recording your voice in stereo. And it can end up sounding a little bit weird, a little bit just surrounding kind of. And one of the things that you can do to fix that is after you've recorded your audio with that kind of recorder, convert that to mono in your software. And if you need it as stereo, convert it back out to stereo. But by flattening it to mono, that significantly reduces that weird presence sound that you get from many of those portable recorders.
Awesome. We got Gary working his way in here. That was what you heard going on there. But it looks like he was coming in via mobile. He's going to hack his... well, maybe you just heard your hack, Daniel. He's coming in. Although it looks like his screen... I don't know what's going on, actually, because it looks like you can see the controls of his screen. So, I don't know. Let's find out. Gary, welcome. But I think, well, back to the roundtable. I think you have to unmute yourself because I muted you. I think that's how it works. So we'll get Gary in here. Maybe coming from New Zealand. It's a Kiwi. David, any other hacks?
Well, I'll say the first hack that I just mentioned actually has come up really handy in an interview where Skype did not work, and it just literally it just stopped, and there was no getting it back up, and we only had the subject. Matter of fact, it was for Rain Pryor, and everything just failed in Skype, and it was a nightmare for us. We thought, okay, we have a complete hour. If we don't get this fixed in the next 10 minutes, we're done. So we went to that old way as a fallback, and it still worked out as well as it possibly could. And the rest is editing history.
Nice. And as we go along, if this reminds anybody who's on the roundtable, it is filling up. Like, I couldn't do this on Blab. It would have to kick person out every time. I'm kind of just leaving people in. I might have to, if I boot you, it's just because I'm bringing someone else. Someone dropped off there. But I was Jeff. But if it reminds you of a story of a hack that you have, chime in. It's the roundtable. We're supposed to interrupt.
I've got another hack that I'll give you, which is in soliciting guests. Sometimes you got to send out a lot of emails over and over again, and only some percentage of them people come back and say yes, that they want to be a guest on the podcast. So I'm a Gmail user, and I use a Gmail extension called Yesware, which does a lot of things. It's way more powerful and has a lot more firepower than just what I'm using it for. But you can create email templates. So I've got just a standard template that says, solicit one, which is just, hey, we've got a podcast. You can listen to it here. Would you like to be a guest? If so, let me know, and I'll send you more information. And then solicit two, which kind of sends them more information. And I use it to create templates that I automatically send after we publish an episode. Here's the link. Here's the thing. So I'm not writing the same emails over and over again. I'm just using a template to fill stuff in. That winds up saving me a lot of time with a lot of things on my podcast.
I have a hack
Go ahead,
for
Dave.
guests. when they have something to promote is the best time to ask them if they want to come on your show. Because I asked over and over and over for Pat Flynn to come on my show, and like the one time he was having a baby, I'm like, come on, what the heck? Priorities, buddy. And,
Wait, was there a time when Pat Flynn didn't have something to promote?
Yes,
There you
well,
go.
when he came out with the Smart podcast player, I was like, hey, and he's like, hey, I suddenly had time. So
It's just it's the junket, right? We see this in Hollywood. We see it on the talk show. Everyone makes the circuit. So yeah, it's a great tip. Is like catch them while they really they're out there to be promoting.
So along the same lines, then, getting on the email lists of publicists and PR agencies, especially like book authors, things like that. So I'll get emails every now and then from a book author who publishes a book about food, and I'll just respond to that. And that's one of the easiest ways for me to book guests. They always want to do that. So if you can get on those mailing lists, and that's usually not hard. You usually just ask, and they're happy to send you their spam. So get on the list.
I like the hack of a hack of a hack. If you go to Amazon, speaking of what Seth was talking about, and go to the new releases in your like whatever topic, usually at the bottom, if you dig far enough, there's an RSS for new releases in that genre, and you can put that into Feedly, and then you can see if there's a cool book title that comes your way, go there and go to the publisher. Don't go to the author, because the author can go, nah, I don't want to go on your podcast. But the publisher will go, hey, we've got some promotion for you, and hey, you need to promote your book. So
I apparently called Gary Wise at work on his cell phone. we almost got him in. But David, you were shaking your head. I'm hearing a little USB pop. So it could be me. That's only
sorry. Yeah, I was actually turning the mic off.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm not sure it was you. I was mixing. I was starting with you, and then I was mixing the. There's some. It might be me. So, anyways, if you catch it. But David, you were shaking your head on the publicist hack. Like, it reminded you of something.
Well, the publicist, well, Dave said you have to, well, at least I have. I've had great success of going through the actual PR person, not for the actual person who wrote the book, but through the actual publisher themselves. They are really accessible. They're extremely easy to work with. They're happy to help in any way they can. And like Dave said, they just want to sell more books. So they're very interested in getting that name out there, that person out there. So it's been very simple. But another hack is, outside of that, not going directly on Twitter to an individual to find them, but to go through the proper channels. They actually do appreciate that. It seems a lot easier, at least for me it's been a lot easier to go through the proper channels.
I'm fairly informal, so I will use Twitter to get people. The thing is, oftentimes I'm probably already having that conversation with them. But yeah, I mean, it does, try multiple things, but maybe do the most formal thing first and work down the ladder.
On the side of interviews, actually the flip side of interviews, if you are being interviewed, here's a little hack. Write your bio in HTML format. So if there are important links or terms or things that you want hyperlinked, instead of telling people, please include these links and all of this stuff, write your bio in HTML, if you know how to do HTML or can just make something give you HTML, and use your hyperlinks already in there. So like my bio, for example, mentions SEO for podcasters or Podcaster Society or my podcast reviews, and it hyperlinks then those things to those actual URLs. So it saves the person that's interviewing me the trouble of hyperlinking those things. They can just copy and paste my bio to their HTML section.
That's what I was going to ask. How is this working? They're coming. Is this, what about on your about page, right? Are you saying like have your bio somewhere where people could copy and paste and then it transfers to HTML?
It could be that, but I'm talking about in the direct correspondence. So when someone has arranged an interview with me, I'll send them my bio in HTML format with the actual like ampersand, all of the HTML there in plain text. So all they have to do is copy that and paste it into the HTML or the text view of their post editor. And all of my hyperlinks are there using the keywords I want to use. And it makes it easy for them, and it helps the link back to me as well.
Do you mention that to them, or you just hopefully they just pick it up?
I say, here's my bio in HTML for your convenience.
Nice, okay.
Hey, and they've always said, I love it. That's great.
In fact, I think I featured you in an all access column, Daniel, and I think you sent that to me, and actually I did love it. It was a lot easier for me, so I prefer that.
Nice. Make it easy for sure. Like that always goes with anything, right? If someone's on your show, Dave, did you mention this during or in the pre-show about making sure that you said something about Twitter, and if you have someone on your show, didn't you say something about that?
If you let's say I do a mention about I do a review for the ATR 2100, it would make sense to do a tweet about this and tweet Audio Technica, because they might then retweet that to their followers, and it's just an easy way to get, not that a tweet's gonna, give you 10,000 downloads, but it might get you that relationship and get more people going your way.
So check this out. Like I just posted a video on YouTube, youtube.com/Ray Ortega, and somehow they're either already watching or in my tweet I may have put Rode. I don't even know, but it would have been a good idea when I promoted that video to mention Rode or whatever product, just like you're saying. But Rode commented on my video, and it was just a comment, but it felt really good that they were watching and they approved. They said, way to go. But at some point, that company may share your tweet. They may retweet, right? If you tweet like that, and then you get in front of their 40,000, 100,000, whatever it is, followers. It could even be 1,000 if those people are really engaged. Doesn't matter. But making it easy for them to share your content is a great, I don't even know if I call it a hack. It is a best practice, I would say.
No,
but
absolutely. This is what I use show notes for, a show notes page. I mean, to me, a show notes page is two things. It's to publish the links for your listeners so that they can go back and find stuff easily. But the other thing that I use it for is I go through my show notes page and try and link as many things as I can, and I click on each of those links, open them up in a new window, and then I look for a Facebook page and a Twitter account associated with each of those, and I will post to their Facebook page and say, hey, we talked about you in your podcast, blah, 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 and then post a link back, and I'll tweet them out, hey, at Portland, Oregon coffee shop, we mentioned you in your podcast, blah, 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 blah. And it does exactly that. They turn around, they love it, they share it with their followers, and it drives traffic back. It works so well that I have a feature at the end of my show called Out of the Frying Pan, where I just ask for sort of rapid-fire recommendations from my guests. Hey, what's your favorite, because we're talking about a different food destination. What's your favorite coffee shop there? What's your favorite, place to go for drinks? What's your favorite, dessert place to go? And so it just gets me a bunch of links at the back end of each episode that I can then use for this, and so all these other places are included in the podcast episode, even if not that many came up naturally in the conversation. So that works really well.
That's awesome. Yeah, totally. And so I have an awesome transition here to the next new roundtable or with the hack, but related to what we're talking about. I used to produce a music show, and music, I mean, it's really fun to talk about music, but good luck finding a real audience, like gathering a lot of people. It's tough because it's kind of broad and there's a lot of that out there. But one day I had the idea that, hey, we're interviewing these people. Let me check their Facebook page. And one of the bands we had covered, and they weren't even interviewed, we just covered them, had like 175,000 Facebook followers or something crazy, right? And I was like, oh, wow, okay, opportunity knocks. And I contacted the management, whatever, and I said, hey, we did a show, we featured you, we talked all about you. Can you post this to your Facebook wall, right? Because I could post it to their wall, but only people are going to see that are people who find their page. If they post it, it goes out to their fans, obviously not 175,000, because we know that Facebook only shows X amount of people the feed. Unfortunately, in this date in history, they're going to do that to Instagram too. That sucks. But anyways, so, in that case, you can go out and interview people who are relevant, but you can take a look, especially in the beginning. I mean, if you can get what do they call it, like an influencer in your community, it's extremely related to your content, but they have a large following. That's one thing you can sort of look at and say, hey, they have a really large following. I can get in front of their target audience with content I know they'll like. So that was a good hack. And someone who used to, like all of the 10 people who used to listen to that show. Jeff, did you listen to that show?
I did. Spider Crickets, right?
Spider Cricket Music Podcast. I doubt you can even find it online anymore.
I actually searched because when I first met you, that's exactly how I found you. A couple years later, I was trying to remember who you were. I remember there was this podcast guy, and I'm like, Spider Monkey, Spider this, Spider that, and I finally remembered Spider Cricket, but it was all about the actual animal. There is actually a Spider Cricket.
Yeah, hilarious. Wait, you said you found me so you're one of, like I said, what had to be a very tiny amount of people. How did you? What were you searching for to find?
It was something about podcasting. There was you and there's other guy, and you were there, and you guys were drinking beer and just having a great time. I said, that's what I want to do.
Nice.
That's exactly what I want to do. So I said,
dragged you into podcasting, and like seriously, maybe like 8 years later, you're on the Roundtable. Like,
thank you for having me, by the way, and by the way, gentlemen, Dave and Daniel and you guys, I've been following you guys as well. But I'm sorry, Ray was the first. So,
well, one of us had to be someone's first. So, you know.
Anyway, my hack is actually a literal hardware hack.
Wait, what's your show, Jeff?
IsAnybodyWatching.com. Brand new podcast. I've been podcasting. I have several others, but that's our newest one. And so we have one episode under our belt. So IsAnybodyWatching.com. All right. My hack is literally a hardware hack. And Ray at one time had shown his desk and said he's going to build this project. And it's a rack mount, and it's for your desk. And so I kept waiting and waiting for pictures, and finally Ray posted some pictures, and so I did the same thing, and it has been a godsend because racks are expensive. This was not, and it was relatively easy to build. And I'm going to try something here. I hope this works, so bear with me. I'm going to try and show some pictures.
Nice. Oh, look at. Oh, wait, sorry. Let me put it on the screen. There you go. All right, so this is pre-build or during the build.
That's during the build, and that's basically what it looks like. And then there's the second one, which is the second rack. And then I realized I need to angle this. And then that's kind of before I painted it, making sure everything fit.
It looks exactly like mine. So why don't you, for the audio-only audience, why don't you tell us a little bit, what are we looking at? What are those rails made out of?
They're like L brackets, aluminum L brackets. You buy them in links, and then you bring it home and cut it, and it's relatively easy to cut. Do wear gloves, though, because the shavings can get in your skin. And then you just size it up, drill the holes, and then the hardest part for me was finding the right angle, and that's what I think I mentioned today when I spoke to you, that I am doing a 2.0 version.
Nice.
Because as the angle is too steep, you can't reach under there and insert and uninsert audio cables. It's like minuscule space, so I'm going to redo the angle a little bit higher. And this last picture is actually of today, and I apologize up front for the mess, but that's it in its paint form being used this very day. So with the mixer underneath it. And it literally it was the perfect fit for my desk, and I could not be happier with that hack.
Yeah, you know, the reason I went and created that is because it didn't exist. I needed small, right? And everything rack desktop, even though it's a desktop, it was like 15 inches tall. So it's just way too big. And a lot of podcasters, we have maybe one or two pieces at most, if we have anything, of like outboard type gear. So we only need to put in one or two things and maybe your mixer underneath it. So perfect solution. I don't know, Jeff, I should have started selling them. Maybe you start selling them. Someone's got to make money from this, right? So
maybe I'll start selling 2.0 versions.
Yeah, I was going to sell the plans. I'm going to do that free ebook for your own desktop.
I really appreciate you putting your pictures up there because and now because of you, I have to go buy a house that has an extra building so I can build my own studio now. So.
Yeah, Daniel and I have been talking a lot about that. I think it's been coming along. Dave asks me all the time, "How's the studio?" I am hacking my garage to be a podcast studio / office. It takes me a long time to do everything, as Jeff alluded to, when it took me forever to post those pictures, but it's so true. So does anyone else here have a hardware hack that they've done?
I've got a weird one. I use a Heil PL2T. It's the popular overhead boom arm, but any kind of boom arm you have, you might run into a problem where it drifts on you, and not up and down like a weight issue, but it slowly turns one direction or another because whatever you're mounting it to might be a little unlevel. So what I found that I could do is take some business cards, fold them in half, and stick them kind of like a well, I don't know what they call it, in shiv, I think.
I think prison. That might be a prison. That's a shank or a shiv.
Yeah.
Don't shiv anybody to get your microphone to stay still.
Yeah, you stick it in just a little bit under where the C-clamp clamps onto the desk. And that right there can give you just a little bit more of an angle that you need to even it out so that it's perfectly upright. The other thing to that is take a simple block of wood, like something that's wider, like a 2x4 maybe, or a flat piece. You can make it look nice, but put that on top of your desk. you C-clamp your microphone onto that and on the desk, helps distribute the grip of the microphone, so you're not destroying your desk if you use a C-clamp for your microphone stand.
Nice. Any other hardware hacks?
I think I stole this one from Jeffrey Powers in the Google Plus group, but this is actually, I have a lot of sound hard walls in my place and in my office at work especially, so I just built, this is like one of those flexible cloth drawers that, folds up that you can get for $15 on Amazon.com, and stuck some just egg crate foam in the inside and just put it right behind the microphone, and that cuts down on the noise quite a bit, helps out a lot.
I'm just mass inviting people at this point, so there could just people popping in left and right. So, Dave, anything? Give us another hack. Let's just jump off from there.
You have two Daves.
Oh, sorry. That's David. I have two Davids. Dave Jackson, co-host, always on the ball. I'm always ready to go. David Jackson, do you have another hack for us?
If I was doing a show on entertainment, let's say I'm doing a sci-fi movie podcast.
You're going to tell me you haven't done a show that's based on entertainment?
I have not yet. But there's
goals,
still time.
Dave. Goal. Yeah,
I know.
Goals.
I would go to IMDb. I would sign up. I think it's $20 a month. Now, I've never done this, but I've heard this hack. Sign up for $20 a month and find everybody you would ever want to contact, and you can get not their like home phone, but you can, like Seth was talking about, you can find the proper channels to go through, and then cancel at the end of the month.
And what?
Yeah, that's IMDb Pro.
IMDb Pro.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, David, not co-host David. How do you say your last name, David?
LaFaire.
LaFaire. How did you're familiar with that? So does that sound like something maybe you would do or have done?
Have done, and it has worked out great. Actually, it gives you more contacts than you'll ever be able to contact in your whole life. But if you take a focused approach in what you want to, or who you want to interview and the kinds of people you want on the show, it certainly gives you a lot of avenues to get into contact with those people. And like Dave said, it's extremely inexpensive, especially for the ROI that you're going to get out of it. Interesting.
Very cool. Well, does anyone else have a hack? I know I should let me bring in a couple of these. Ryan, hopefully it's Muniak. He's mentioned something that Dave, like you mentioned, the camcorder RCA cable says works great for running audio in and out of his laptop that has a single audio jack. Sort of a mix minus. And Daniel, you're familiar with this one, right?
Yeah, it's a TRRS cable where you have 3 RCA on one end, and then it's a TRRS 3.5 millimeter on the other end. It doesn't work all that well on MacBooks, but it does seem to work better on Windows computers and mobile devices.
Interesting. Now, I just actually bought. Now I know because it's a mixer, typically is a line level out, so you can have a lot of trouble with the audio being too hot if you don't have it going into a line in. If it's a mic in, especially like I think on mobile devices, it can be really tough. Yeah. I'm holding up a iRig 2, and Dave has the first version of this, and it works great. You can see, this is the TRS. It's just got the 3 black bands on the 1/8 inch cable there on the end, and this gives you the ability to put your line in, and it takes line level because, again, as podcasters, we often are using music devices to do podcasting stuff. You can see a little picture of a guitar there, but it takes line level and it puts that into my audio, my smartphone, and this lets me do a mix minus with my phone, and it lets me not have to worry about the level. I'm getting the level what I'm using on my faders. I don't have to be like this razor thin edge of blowing out the audio. Nick Suberling has been on the show a lot. We used this cheap $12 device, and it didn't take line level, and we literally blew up his iPad. Like it made noises, and it just died. Fortunately, Apple is magic, and it healed itself, but it survived.
Yeah, what I found on my mixer is that line output that goes to the phone has to be on, I think, the space between completely off and that first little line, like almost literally a hair up.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And the problem is you can't monitor it. You're kind of relying on the person on the other end to tell you, hey, your stuff is like way peaking, and they may not know it. So the iRig 2, it's not inexpensive. It sucks they got rid of the first one because it was a lot cheaper, but there are solutions. Harry, welcome back to the Roundtable, man. Nice to see you in your big headphones. Those are pretty.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Very cool. What's up, guys?
What's up? Do you even know what we're talking about? I just invited you randomly.
HD in the house.
Look, I think Dave got a haircut, right?
Dave,
Exactly.
Dave seems to look different every time he comes on the Roundtable. So
He's got that.
he's got a stash going this week. God, it's not Movember.
This is just called Dave's lazy and doesn't feel like shaving.
I like it. Harry, if you've been listening, or do you have a podcasting hack for us?
It's funny because I'm actually, as I was listening, as I was working through some stuff for a client, and it was actually a hack because I'm a huge fan of Zapier.
Oh yes.
Zapier's.
Is that the guy who does the pan flute?
That's his cousin.
What is Zapier? Please tell us.
Zapier is, I don't know if you're familiar with If This Then That.
Yes.
Zapier is If This Then That on steroids, and it connects to hundreds of more applications, even enterprise level applications. So companies use it a lot, and they have higher services that connect to like Salesforce and accounting services. So I've got a lot of moving parts when it comes to getting files to the editor, and then the editor to. There's a really tricky one that I'm having now where they have to give me a first pass of the audio so I can get it transcribed. So I've spent most of the past couple of hours literally making sure outlining what the steps are. But in essence, what happens now, it's kind of like this Willy Wonka everlasting gobstopper machine, because it goes to the once the file is ready from the client, it creates a zap and it says recognize the file in this folder and send a copy of that with the link to the editor so he can strip it and send it, and then there's another, you can do connected zaps. So it's just these bunch of steps that happen, and they automate the whole process. So in essence, what happens is a file goes into the folder, we get notified, we create a first pass of the transcription, and we also send another email separately to another part of the team that they can start working on the intros and outros. So it's about 15 to 20 steps that are happening right now. But I think it takes a while, probably 3 to 4 hours to get them configured. But I think once you do, and it works, it's like a thing of beauty.
I'm randomly muting people, so you guys can unmute yourself. I'm just trying to figure out where this old pop's coming from. So, anyways,
I do want to second that, though.
Yeah, cool.
Zapier is a fantastic tool. I mean, I use it sometimes outside of podcasting, but for example, if you want somebody to fill out gravity forms and you want it to send the information to your MailChimp account, so they add it to your MailChimp list, and go to a webinar, so they're signed up for a webinar, and you want them to dump into the info into a Google spreadsheet, things like that. It's a fantastic tool for just making all your other tools talk to each other. I do highly recommend it.
I'm going to ask a question that I want answered, and I'm going to just phrase it in the form of putting it into this show. But Harry, is transcripts a podcast hack? Is that working for you? Does anyone else use transcripts?
Yes.
Do you find it's worth it? Because that can be A, expensive, B, time consuming, right?
Well, I think since I have clients who are podcasting more for their business, they're willing to make the investment. And so what I've done as a value add is I have an editor that I work with that takes the raw transcription and we slightly tweak it. So we change some of the words. So if we say like I hear, just it talks about you can when you read a transcription, it sounds like two people talking on an interview, but you can tweak some of the words so it reads a little cleaner. And then we repost that entire transcription onto medium.com. Sometimes we've been testing a couple of approaches, but sometimes we take half of it or 2/3 of it, and it says, here's a sneak peek of a conversation we had, my client had with his guest, and then at the bottom it says, for more on this and to hear the entire episode, click here, and it sends them back to the website, and it has a little bio. So some of those we've been doing week in and week out for a client, and one of them, it was just a topic that got picked up by someone in the startup community who looks at these articles, and so they saw the article because we're putting quality content there and SEO-rich content there, and now his Medium post that we prepare for him from the transcription is being featured on another Medium site.
Transcripts, anybody else? This is a
I'm
question
against them.
podcasting.
Sorry.
Yeah. No,
But-
this is what the roundtable is for.
Okay,
Differing
here's a
opinions.
hack related to transcripts, related to show notes.
You have to tell us why you're against transcripts first. I'm not letting you off the hook.
They're a lazy man's way of doing show notes, or a lazy
Okay,
woman's way.
Well,
of
explain that. Then explain it.
Transcripts are giving you a lot of words, low quality content, unless it's a monologue and the person is an excellent public speaker. But if it's a dialogue, then a transcript is a lot of wasted space. And Google does look at the quality of the language relative to how much there is. So if you have a lot of words, but it's not very high quality content, Google will rank it lower. What I prefer is writing show notes as a blog post. Now, I know there are accessibility reasons for transcripts too, but people who need transcripts, like they're hearing impaired, but they still want the content. I think they want the content, not necessarily the exact words you said. They want the content. So if you can write the show notes as a blog post that presents the content clear enough, but it reads as a blog post, that's far more effective. Yes, that takes more time though, depending on your process, but transcripts are certainly better than nothing. So
Yeah.
that's my thought on that. Can I get to my hack though?
Yes, fine.
The hack for show notes, whether it be transcripts or something else, is to templatize your show notes as much as possible. And there's a WordPress plugin that can do this really well for you, and that's Simple Content Templates. It's a free plugin. There is a paid version called Advanced Content Templates, and that gives you even more power. But with Simple Content Templates, you create your starter post, and you can add in whatever you want. It can have images, links. It can have just placeholders or reminders of what goes where, or headings, basic formatting, anything like that. It's your starter post. So then when you go to create your new post in WordPress, you tell it to create a new post from a template, and then you have this information pre-filled in for you. It could be like all of your feedback information. It could remind you the PowerPress player goes here, not here. It could have your logo automatically imported for you, or important links you often refer to, or sections of your podcast that already have the headings and the bullet points inserted for you. That is a nice hack that really speeds up the process of doing your show notes.
Very cool. And just to work in a few more now, I am on Anchor. Excuse me. I don't know if you guys know about Anchor, and I mean, I'm speaking to the audience. I know most of you probably do. Check me out on Anchor. Check everyone out on Anchor. It's like audio Twitter. Everyone's been trying to do this. It's not something new, but it's fun. What's cool is that you can ask a question. I asked basically on Anchor, I said, what's your favorite podcasting hack? And I got a few of those back. And I'm trying to remember who exactly. I got a lot of feedback from various places, but I think Alex Knight talked about he gets discrete audio channels from Skype without an additional computer from his mixer, but it was pretty geeky. So I would say go to @0distraction if you're interested in learning how he did that, or I'll link you to Anchor. Just get in touch with me. John Mooney and Charles McFall both have been on the Roundtable, have a similar hack that Daniel has run into, or has a funny story about, where they built essentially their own pop filter. With in John Mooney's case, he used a baby sock, and in Charles McFall's, he used a crochet ring from like a dollar store and a pantyhose from one of his, or tights. I think maybe it was tights from one of his daughters or something. And I think it was Daniel is the pantyhose guy.
Oh, no. Do not put that on a t-shirt. Do not tweet that. Do not turn that into a meme.
That's all
that
web.
goes nowhere. That ends
That's in the
here.
that's in the transcription.
I
already.
don't edit. Yeah, it's
This
in the
is just
transcript.
between you and us. No one else, okay?
Totally private. Daniel, what did you want to tell that real quick?
Yeah, when I first started podcasting, I came from a professional background, so I knew the importance of good quality audio and mic technique and that kind of thing, but I didn't have good quality equipment. I didn't have a pop filter. I was using one of those stick microphones that used to come with sound cards. But what I did for a pop filter was I took a metal hanger. Those things are hackable, so hackable by themselves. Roasted marshmallows? Anyone? Metal hanger? But I took this metal
Opening
hanger.
my car is usually what's going on. Back in the 90s, not anymore.
I took a metal hanger, made a little loop with it, and then I was single at that time, and I did the super embarrassing thing of asking around my office, asking the ladies if they had any pantyhose they didn't need anymore that had runs in it or anything, and could I have it? And I had to explain very quickly what I needed it for, so they didn't think I was some freak.
Yeah, they still thought that,
but it did work well. It serves as a decent pop filter. Pantyhose around a wire hanger. Give it this nice little loop, and it sits nicely in front of the microphone.
Maybe they give you credit for creativity because they're just like, a pop filter, that's just, all right, I believe you. Here you go, sir.
I totally did the same thing.
Nice.
Same thing, except instead of using a hanger, what I used was a solo cup, the firm rim on it.
Was this in college by chance?
No, unfortunately, this was probably about 40 weeks ago. So
Nice.
Just as a quick pop filter, and since the host is a woman of the show, made perfect sense. Got the pantyhose pretty quickly.
Nice. So Nilo, and I don't know if, I hope I'm saying it, Nilo Alhovera. I'm not going to say it right. You guys probably know him. He's usually in the community. He asked me is Hangouts on air to a podcast workflow even a hack? And I didn't even think of it myself, much like Jeff, who unfortunately dropped off. So hopefully, Jeff, thanks for joining us, and you get to say goodbye. But, I've been doing that with this show since the beginning, which is we record live here, and I told you about the ATR hack that I'm doing for the audio, and then I turned it into an audio podcast because I'm recording it into a recorder, and I can get a really nice quality file from that. But, there have been times when I've also just ripped it out of the YouTube, ripped it out of the YouTube video that stripped the audio and made that an audio only podcast. And, most people are going to get more traction on their audio only podcast than they are in their video podcast, or maybe even their video on YouTube. So this show does well. We get a nice showing here live and then the archive on YouTube. Although, if you watch long form talking head, it's really hard to get people to watch for any amount of time on YouTube. You'll see a significant drop off. But the podcast, where I think a lot of people find us, and Dave and Daniel, there's another hack, right? So anyways, you can record an audio while you're doing the video, turn that into a podcast. The hack that just reminded me of that is working with people in your niche. So Dave and Daniel, in theory, some people would look at us. I bet people find us and say, ooh, I bet they're competitive, right? I bet like Daniel and Dave are always trying to get user or listeners away from each other. And, we team up and do a show because we're friends first. And we know through experience that having people in that same niche on your show is actually going to do more for your show than it is more good than it is going to do harm. Dave talks about the show all the time, but on his show, and it works really well. So those are actually kind of two hacks in one. And I invited Mark. He doesn't look like he can make it, Mark Boyle, but he said making his podcast, this is related, making podcast into videos and putting them on YouTube. He says not much of a hack, but it's fun adding images and links to a non-clickable media like podcast. Has anyone done that? Have they taken audio only and shifted it over to YouTube, whether it's just literally putting the audio up on YouTube, or what I would suggest doing is finding a way to grab some content from the audio and make it YouTube friendly? Anyone done that?
I do leverage the connection in Auphonic, which allows you to do that just with one click. So in an effort. So since I'm using Auphonic to process the audio, they have an API for SoundCloud and YouTube, and I don't see a lot of traffic there, but all it needs from my part is a 700 by 394 static image, which I customize for each episode, and then I just include the audio as well, so it makes its way up there pretty easily. Right.
Could be a gateway, right? What's the power of that one right person who hears your show and spreads it to hundreds of their friends? So I don't know. Do any of you guys, Dave and Daniel certainly must have opinion about taking your audio to YouTube.
I don't like fake video on
Perfect.
YouTube.
Me neither, to be honest with you. So,
but I do send when I do certain podcasts, when I live stream them, I'll live stream to YouTube Live. So it is creating video, and I have the webcam on me, and it might be a Hangout or it might be only on me, but it is actual video, talking head. But that's better than fake video. And I do have some users who faithfully watch the entire episode and comment at certain spots on YouTube, but we get far more traction with our podcast than
the funny thing is
the YouTube.
you call it fake video, but there used to be this thing called an enhanced podcast. And it can work really well, which is just a podcast that used to show images like on your iPod. Now it's showing your iPhone. Really hard to do that these days. It was a little easier back with GarageBand. But, if you're an artist, I used to listen to a guy who would podcast while he painted, I think it was, and then the images would come up as I watched. And I actually found it really helpful. So if you do have an audio-only show that is visual, it may be a good option for you. And Harry, I'm a huge Auphonic lover and user, and have talked to Georg for hours on my show. I didn't even know you could send it over there. So, with it being that easy.
To be quite honest, it is a Google property. I just did a quick test. If you Google Ray Ortega interview, my interview with you on Podcast Junkie is #1, but the YouTube link is #6.
YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world behind.
So, however we personally feel about whether we would watch it or not, in terms of making it available to find and open to people who are just searching for the right keyword, then there's no harm in doing it.
Well, the controversy there is that what you want them to find? It might be, let's say it's even the #1 result. Great, but being #1 isn't good if they get disgusted by the fact that it's a fake video and they leave. I see, I've done this experiment, and this is very quick. I've done this experiment with a podcast on my network. A video had 25,000, quote, views. 95% of them left within the first 90 seconds. And all of the videos after that, the number of views just continued to dive down to the point that the latest video that was published, like that fake video, got almost nothing. And it was because I think people were being conditioned to realize this is fake video, that's all this channel puts out. I'm not interested. I don't want to listen to audio while I'm on YouTube.
Awesome. Both sides there. That's perfect. We don't get a lot of that. Is when I created the roundtable, it was like, let's hear your side, let's hear your side. Hopefully they're different. So I love when that comes up. So that is for the whole point of the roundtable, is to hear these different sides. You go back to your show and you decide, hey, is YouTube on video? Or podcast on YouTube? Is that something I want to do, right? I can rank better, but maybe what's a consequence? And the beauty of podcasting is that you can experiment, and like Daniel did, he experimented, he found it didn't work out too well for him, and he's not going to do that, but you may find your audience. So you definitely want to try different things, I think, is the most important thing.
Here's a hack. Here's a hack to make your videos look a little bit better if you're doing live streaming while you're podcasting. Headphones can sometimes get in the way. They can look a little bit cheap and such, but it can look really neat if you can hide your headphones in some way. And an easy way to do that is if you're wearing earbuds, instead of letting the cord go around the front like you would normally wear them, wrap them around the top of your ears and bring the cord behind your head. And depending on the earbuds you're wearing, it may be totally comfortable to wear it that way, or you might need to switch it. Like I wear Apple EarPods, and so what I do is I put the right earbud in my left ear, left earbud in my right ear, and that fits perfectly with the earbuds being upside down that way. And then the cord wraps around the top of my ears to the back of my neck, and then it's hidden. There's no cord in front of me, and that also gets a cord out of the way so I don't accidentally yank the headphones out of my head. So
why
now
do I
there's
think
no
it helps
visible
to
cord.
have long hair?
Well, yeah, the long hair can help hide it too. But even if I didn't have long hair, you would barely see I'm wearing headphones.
So we're talking about audio and going to YouTube. If you want to see that, if you're listening to the audio-only version, youtube.com/Ray Ortega. Check it out on podcast, or podcastroundtable.com is actually a better place for if you're listening to go to and see what Daniel's talking about. Scroll to where are we at? We're all at the end. It's near the end. You can even see me now. I'm on screen and I've got a modified version of what Daniel's talking about. I also have Apple EarPods, we're being very specific there, and it's going down my shirt, and that is mainly to keep it out of my way. But I also do like it to be a little bit more, out of the way. This is supposed to be a conversation, so and I bought
actually. You know what? Sure makes in-ear.
I know, and I bought them. They're right here. The best, the only thing I use them for is on the plane. They're great, but they can be. Here's the problem: they block out the sound so well that all I hear is me inside my head. Whereas these, I can hear my voice outside of my head. So, these are things you have to experiment with. For sure. And Jeff joined us back in. Seth, you really wanted to say, we're about to head out here.
I want to go back to one other thing that Daniel was mentioning earlier about show notes and the content template. And I've got another lazy man's way of doing show notes. I would interview a lot of food bloggers and people who weren't necessarily used to being doing audio interviews, and so we would want to prep them so that we would know that they would be good. And so I would use Gravity Forms on a WordPress website. You can probably also use FormStack for this, and we would have like a show prep where they would fill out a form, and I would essentially ask them all the questions I was going to ask them in the interview. Not only would that make sure that they got ready for the interview so that they would be good, even if they haven't done interviews before, they will have thought of the answers, but it would actually write the show notes. My guest would write the show notes for me, and I wouldn't have to, and so that worked well. So that's another
a definite hack. Yeah, have the guest write your show notes. Although that's a debatable one, right? Do we want to give the questions ahead of time and sort of kill the spontaneity? So two different views there. I like it.
I'm not Tim Russert, but
Harry.
Just one quick one that I actually was using today. I was on Dropbox today, and I saw that they had, I don't know if it's new, but they've got something on the left-hand side called File Requests. And I played around with it today, but essentially you create a request to someone and you give them this link. And then what I did was I linked to the folder internally on my system where I capture the guest that's coming up, their high-res biopic. I linked to that folder, and then I sent them a request through that feature, and I said, hey, when your headshot is ready, drop it in this folder. I'm going to test it as soon as he sends it in, but that's pretty cool because I used to have to email it, and then they would email it back, and then I have to look for it in the attachment. This is pretty cool.
Nice.
File requests in Dropbox, just to have people send you directly something to your individual Dropbox.
Very cool. And this is one of those rounds we could do over and over. We've had a few of those. I like those. The only hard part I found out about doing, you're like, let's do podcasting hacks 2. The hard part is I have to go back and hear all, I gotta go, list out all the hacks that were listed before and then be like, try not to talk about this one. Try not, because the same ones are going to come up because they tend to be popular. But this
and then you can write an ebook about it.
There you go. Well, I'm going to hack that by
from the transcript.
hiring you to do it or something. Yeah,
hire
exactly.
that Amazon service that will listen to it and for 10 cents cut them all out.
There, boom. See, we're making our own hacks right here in real time. Nice one, Jeff. Welcome back. Good you got back
Thank
here
you.
at the
Sorry,
end.
I cut out. I'm so used to Blab. I felt like I needed to let someone else in, but I forgot it's a Roundtable. So.
I wanted to do this on Blab, but it turned out better on Google Plus, I think, because we all got to stay. It was a lot of fun. I invited just a bunch of people, and whoever jumped in when they could. So that was very cool. I'm going to leave one more. We've talked a lot about interviews. Emily from Classy Little Podcast, she said she likes to use, I'll summarize it, but she likes to use the pregnant pause, like the long wait after the interviewee says something, and then she kind of just waits. And, she would find out that she would get, in those instances, they would feel the need, interviewees might feel the need to fill the silence, and sometimes you would get your best quotes from that stuff. And this is a classic interviewer technique, but, I think someone who's new to interviewing might not, it feels weird. It feels really weird to leave dead air there. And we're doing podcasts, you're going to edit that anyways, right? But people will feel it's a human desire to fill that space because it's going to be hard for you to do it. I know for me as a host, I always just let's just get to the next thing. I want to talk. But we have limited time here. I am going to shut down. We're around that hour. And so I want to thank everybody for tuning in live. Of course, several of you are on the Roundtable who tuned in live. We tried to get Gary, and we had, Jack Frew was in the chat, and Timothy McGowan. Thanks, man. So lots of fun. And yeah, we could do another podcasting hacks too. I'm going to have to head over to Mechanical Turk and outsource that. But as we go out here, real quick, what's your show? And we will see you later. So we'll start with you, Daniel. You're on the in today.
I'm Daniel J. Lewis from theaudacitytopodcast.com, where I give you the guts and teach you the tools to launch or improve your own podcast.
Right on. And if you want to hack a live show like Daniel does, find a way, much like descriptions, right? If it was a transcript, it wouldn't work so much, but he works in his plugs, in his natural conversation. He got 3 in one sentence. So we're hacking the live stream. David, thanks for joining us. First time Roundtabler. Appreciate it.
Thanks. This is David LaFaire. I am the producer for the Unwritable Rant podcast, and you can find the podcast at theunwritablerant.com.
Very cool. David Jackson live from the bathroom somewhere in an undisclosed location.
I'm Dave Jackson from the schoolofpodcasting.com. We'll just leave it at that.
Short and sweet. Always a pro. Harry, thanks for joining us once again.
Anytime. I'm Harry Duran, host of Podcast Junkies at podcastjunkies.com. Conversations with interesting hosts like Mr. Ray Ortega.
Hey, check it out. All right. I'll hack my own live stream. Jeff, first time Roundtable, thank you so much, man. And for all the years you've been following along.
Well,
Very
thank
cool.
you, and thanks for letting me on. And you can find me at isanybodywatching.com, a TV review show. Currently, we are watching Into the Badlands. So if you're into that show, check us out.
Very cool. That can be fun for sure. TV podcast, fan podcast, as Daniel knows, is a great way to find an audience, right? Very specific, very niche, and those people, they want more content because they love it. So I've thought of several that I'd like to start, but I think it's about finding the right co-host.
For us, it's kind of different because we are, I guess, semi-nicheless, where we are going to just do one show,
right,
and call it one of our seasons, quote unquote, and then talk about that show and then move on to something else.
Right on. Well, maybe we'll have to have you back to maybe we'll make that around. There's content in there. There's content everywhere. All right. Thanks again, Jeff and Seth. First time, long time. You're a radio guy, so that fits out perfect.
I am a radio guy. My podcast is Taste Trekkers. It's about food and travel, but I also write a column over at allaccess.com, which is a radio industry website. It's called Broadcaster Meets Podcaster, and I've been interviewing a lot of people in the podcasting community. I know, Ray, we featured you there. Daniel, we featured you there. We'll get the rest of you soon. I'd love to have you on there and do Q&A with you. And I'm hosting a panel discussion at the Worldwide Radio Summit this spring with some guys I think a lot of you know, Todd Cochran from Blueberry, Rob Walsh from Libsyn, Eric Nism from Audible, and Panoply is Andy Bowers there as well. But really, a lot of what I'm trying to do is introduce the radio broadcasting world to the world of podcasting, because it's so exciting what's happening in this community, and really want radio to start getting involved.
Yeah, they're not going to have much of a choice. So good luck with that. Kicking and screaming. We will see you guys here when you see this in 2 years. I'm just giving a hard time. All right, it's podcasts, radio, TV, jokes, banter, rivalry, and it's not rivalry. All right. Hey, Chris Reese stopped by in the chat. Thanks, man. He said it's been a while. So thanks to everyone who stopped by. We will see you for podcastersroundtable.com, round 68. You can now go there for the live. Podcastersroundtable.com/live is where the chat is. A little late, but next time you'll get there. See you next time. Wave goodbye, everybody. Adios. Cheers. St. Patty's Day. Patties.